I used to find a strange sort of comfort in visiting my grandfather's grave. It was a quiet place, tucked away in the older section of the cemetery, where the willow trees wept over weathered headstones. I'd go there often, especially when the world felt too loud. It was my little sanctuary, a place to think, to remember, and to feel close to him again. I'd sit on the cool grass, tracing the letters of his name carved into the granite, and just talk. It felt like he was listening. But that all changed one evening, a memory that still chills me to the bone. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and purple. The air was getting cooler, and I knew it was time to leave. I said my usual goodbye, promising to come back soon, and started the long walk back to my car parked by the front gates. My footsteps were the only sound, crunching softly on the gravel path. Just as I was fumbling for my keys, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a call from a friend or my mom, but the screen just read unknown number. Curiosity got the better of me. I swiped to answer, holding the phone to my ear. Hello? I said, my voice a little hesitant. For a moment, there was only static, a faint crackling sound like an old radio. Then a voice spoke, and the world around me seemed to freeze. It was a voice I knew better than my own, a voice I hadn't heard in years, except in my dreams. It was my grandfather. He sounded exactly as I remembered, warm and a little raspy. But the words he said sent a wave of ice through my veins. He asked, "Why did you leave so soon?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I dropped the phone, the clatter echoing in the silent evening. It had to be a prank, right? A cruel, twisted joke. But who would do something like that? And how could they have gotten his voice so perfect? I snatched the phone back up, but the line was dead. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing, trying to find a logical explanation. A recording? A voice simulator? Nothing made sense. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread, but I knew I had to go back. I had to prove to myself it was just my imagination or a sick prank. I drove back to the cemetery under the harsh light of the afternoon sun, trying to convince myself that everything would be normal. I walked the familiar path, my steps feeling heavier than ever before. As I rounded the corner to his section, my breath caught in my throat. Someone was standing there, by his grave. My heart leaped with a flicker of impossible hope. It was him. He was standing with his back to me, wearing his favorite old tweed jacket. "Grandpa?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He turned around slowly, and for a split second, it was his face. The kind eyes, the gentle smile lines. But then it began to change. His face started to twist and contort, like clay being molded by an unseen hand. His skin turned a deathly pale, his eyes sinking into hollow, dark sockets. His mouth stretched into a silent, horrifying scream. It wasn't him. It was a grotesque parody, a nightmare wearing his face. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just turned and ran. I ran faster than I ever have in my life, my lungs burning, tears streaming down my face. I didn't look back. I scrambled into my car, locked the doors, and sped away, leaving a cloud of dust behind me. I never went back to that cemetery. I don't know what that thing was. I don't know what it wanted. But I know one thing for sure. Whatever called me that night, whatever stood by that grave, it wasn't my grandfather. Thanks so much for listening to my story. If you have any unsettling experiences you'd like to share, drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. Have you ever had one of those jobs that seemed too good to be true? You know, the kind where you get paid just to sit there? For me, that was being a night security guard at the old Greenwood Cemetery. Easy money, right? Just me, the moon, and a bunch of permanent residents who couldn't cause any trouble. Or so I thought. My shift was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The first week was blissfully boring. I'd do my rounds, check the gates, and then settle into my cozy little guard shack with a thermos of coffee and a good book. The silence was peaceful, almost meditative. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. But that peace shattered exactly 1 week in. It was 3 a.m. on the dot. I was halfway through my second round, flashlight beam cutting through the thick fog that always rolled in off the nearby river. That's when I saw him. A tall, slender figure standing completely still in the oldest section of the cemetery. My heart hammered against my ribs. We weren't supposed to have any visitors after dark. "Hey!" I called out, my voice sounding weak against the silence. "Cemetery's closed, sir. You need to leave." He didn't move. He didn't even seem to breathe. He was just a silhouette, standing stock still in front of a weathered, ivy-covered tombstone. I figured maybe he was grieving, lost track of time. I decided to give him a few minutes and check back. But the next night, he was there again. Same time, 3 a.m. Same spot, same unnerving stillness. This went on for 3 more nights. Every single night, like clockwork, he would appear. He never moved, never made a sound. He just stood there, a silent sentinel in the moonlight. The unease in my gut grew from a small knot into a cold, heavy stone. This wasn't normal. On the 5th night, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. My curiosity, mixed with a heavy dose of dread, got the better of me. I had to know who this man was and what he was doing. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I left the relative safety of my shack and started walking toward him, my boots crunching softly on the gravel path. As I got closer, the details started to come into focus, and each one made my blood run colder. His clothes were wrong. He was wearing an old-fashioned, high-collared suit, the kind you only see in sepia-toned photographs from a century ago. The fabric was frayed and covered in what looked like dirt and mildew. The air around him grew heavy and smelled of damp earth and decay. My flashlight beam found his hands, hanging limply at his sides. His skin was a pale, ghastly shade of gray, stretched tight over his bones. It looked like old parchment paper. My throat went dry. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to run, and never look behind. But I was frozen, caught in some morbid curiosity. I was only a few feet away now. "Sir?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Are you all right?" He didn't respond. He didn't even flinch. His back was still to me, his shoulders slightly hunched. Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I reached out a shaky hand, intending to just tap him on the shoulder to see if he was even real. The instant my fingers were about to make contact, he turned. But he didn't turn like a normal person. His head snapped around with a sickening, grinding sound, while his body remained perfectly still. And his face? His face is burned into my memory forever. His skin was a patchwork of rot and gray flesh, pulled back from his teeth in a grotesque, unnaturally wide grin. But his eyes were what broke me. They were wide, staring, and filled with a bottomless, ancient rage that felt like it was tearing into my very soul. There was no life in them, only pure, undiluted malice. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The sound was trapped in my lungs. All I could do was run. I sprinted, my legs pumping, my lungs burning as if they were on fire. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel his gaze on me, a physical weight pressing down. I burst into the guard shack, slammed the door, and fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking so violently I could barely fit the key. I spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner, praying for the sun to rise. I quit that job the next morning. I never went back, but that man, he never really left me. Some nights, when I close my eyes, I'm back in that cemetery, and I see that face with its rotting grin and its eyes full of pure hatred. It's a reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, and some secrets should remain buried. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. Have you ever felt a presence when you thought you were completely alone? That bone-chilling sensation that someone is watching you? I have, and it's a story that still haunts my quietest moments. It was a late afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs low in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across everything. I was visiting my father's grave, a ritual I've kept for years. The cemetery was silent, save for the rustling leaves and the distant caw of a crow. As I placed a bouquet of fresh lily on the cold stone, a movement caught my eye. A few rows over, a man stood motionless. He was dressed in clothes that seemed out of another era. Long, dark coat, trousers that were a little too formal for the setting. But what truly held my gaze was his hat. It was a wide-brimmed fedora, pulled down low, completely obscuring his face in shadow. He just stood there, like a statue carved from the twilight itself. I tried to ignore him, thinking he was just another mortal lost in his own grief. I finished my quiet conversation with my dad, brushed the grass from my knees, and started my walk back toward the main gate. I took maybe 20 steps before a strange instinct made me glance over my shoulder. My heart skipped a beat. The man in the hat was no longer by the grave. He was on the path behind me. He wasn't running or even walking quickly. He was just there, closer than he should have been, moving with a slow, deliberate pace. A prickle of unease ran up my spine. I quickened my steps, my casual stroll turning into a brisk walk. The crunch of gravel under my shoes sounded unnaturally loud in the growing silence. I risked another look back. He was closer still. The distance between us was shrinking, yet his pace never seemed to change. It was impossible, illogical. And still, I couldn't see his face. The shadow from his hat was a permanent, impenetrable void. Panic began to set in. My walk turned into a jog, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The gate seemed so far away. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers clumsy and cold. The sound of his steady, unhurried footsteps echoed in my ears, a relentless rhythm counting down my escape. Every instinct screamed at me not to look back again, but I couldn't help it. He was right there, just a few yards away, a dark silhouette against the dying light. I finally reached my car, jamming the key into the lock and throwing myself inside. My hand slammed down a lock button, the click echoing in the sudden safety of the vehicle. I leaned back against the headrest, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had to see if he was still there. Slowly, I raised my head and looked toward the cemetery gate. He was standing there, just outside the iron bars, perfectly still. He was staring directly at my car. For the first time, he tilted his head slightly, as if trying to get a better look. But the shadows clung to his face like a second skin. A cold dread, heavier than anything I'd ever felt, washed over me. We were locked in this strange, silent standoff for what felt like an eternity. Then, as quickly as he had appeared, he turned. He didn't walk back into the cemetery. He stepped sideways, melting into the thick grove of trees that bordered the grounds. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone, vanished. I sat in my car for a long time, waiting for my hands to stop shaking. Later, when I gathered the courage to ask around, I heard whispers. Other people, locals, had seen him too. They call him the man in the hat. Some say he's a guardian, others a lost soul. But everyone agrees on one thing. He's a permanent resident of that cemetery, the man who never truly leaves. And sometimes he follows. What do you think? Was he a ghost, a figment of my imagination, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more strange tales, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.